Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, and shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where we'll be trying as per usual. I was a little bit busy for most of this day, so today is, of course, another late night episode. Justifiably so, I think, this time. Yeah, but I assume from the title you can probably tell that I've watched now the new Hunger Games movie, Hunger Games, Snakes and Songbirds, and I'm going to be talking about it. So, I'll warn you before I get to any spoilers, but I'm not going to recreate Hunger Games or anything like that. This is my daily vlog where I share my very subjective opinions. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:40 p.m. on Monday, December 4th, 2023. Happy birthday to one of my friends. Hence why I was busy today. Yeah, what I was going to say. So, Hunger Games, Snakes and Songbirds, based on the prequel book by Suzanne Collins, which is mostly focusing around the viewpoint of President Snow, who was basically the major antagonist for the trilogy. The main trilogy where Katniss, Hunger Games takes place. So it takes like 65 years ago or something like that. That sounds about right, I can't remember. And it takes place from his young adult life, where I assume he's probably around 18 or something in that movie. What did I think of a movie? I think the movie stretches from okay to good. It's hard to exactly pinpoint it, I think, for me, because there's some moments which I think it does. I think the reason it's so difficult is because there's some parts in it which I think are actually genuinely really good, and some parts which you sort of just go okay. And then the major flaw of it, in my opinion, is that it feels like it drags on quite a lot. Like, it had me, I was I was interested in the first part, and then the first section part, I was like, yeah, interesting. I feel setting things up, and the second part I was like, oh, this is actually a really interesting viewpoint into the Hunger Games, seeing it from a completely different perspective. And then the third part comes where I was just like, okay, you're kind of really losing me again. I'm starting to get fatigued, I suppose, with this. And then it sort of brought it around at the very end, kind of, but interspersed throughout the entire thing are a lot of really good moments actually in the movie itself. But I don't know, I can't say it quite grabbed me in the same way the first Hunger Games did. I think it came close to it at certain parts. I think basically I think the variance is higher. I think the highs are a lot higher than the main Hunger Games. I'm going to talk about the first and second Hunger Games, I guess, because the third one's okay. It was just I don't know why it's split into two parts. But then the lows are also lower, probably as well. Maybe, I don't know. I think the major problem with the movie, I would say, is that it's weird because it's the rare occasion where I'm I feel like this movie should be split into two parts. Because it felt like I was watching almost a different movie in the second half entirely. It was crazy, and then it felt so long. It felt like it was too long at that point. Because I was you had me sold in that first half. If that movie ended at the first halfway point, I'd be it's a bit short, but it had me hooked. You got me. I was damn, that would be a pretty good movie. But then it just kept going, and I'm not going to say the parts that kept going were bad, because there were a lot of really good moments in the parts that kept going. It really felt like it just dragged. But the thing is, I think it's a bit hypocritical in this in a sense, to be this movie should have been split into two parts, because it's a thing we critique movies for doing all the time, for unnecessarily splitting into two parts. They did that with Mockingjay. Mockingjay was split into two parts. Did it need to be? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, that one really felt like it was dragging on, because they were not, I can't remember, not much of note really happened. It definitely felt like it could have ended up being condensed. But this one, it felt like there was actually so much going on that I felt it's weird. It feels like 1.5 movies. It feels like there's not enough to make it 2 movies, but there's too much to make it 1 movie, is probably what I'd say. But from what I understand from reading people's reviews, there's actually still quite a few things that they left out of the book which would have been pretty good to put in. So it could have been, I think it's something which could have probably been 2 shorter movies, but I don't know. In my opinion, it probably would have worked best as a miniseries of a 3-part miniseries based on Hunger Games, but of course that's not necessarily always something entirely plausible. Let's judge it as it is, which is as a movie. And I suppose now we'll be getting into mild spoilers on the whole. I thought it was quite interesting. I think it highlighted the brutality, the absolute hopelessness, I suppose, of the Hunger Games a lot more, probably because it felt a lot more sort of raw in a sense. It's a problem with the first Hunger Games, is a lot of the characters don't feel like teenagers or children, or like they're the right age for the Hunger Games. Like, I think Kato and Glimmer and Marvel definitely all felt like someone like early 20s. They felt just a tad too old to be in the Hunger Games. Like, I understand it's also meant to be a sort of discrepancy of them being like the career tributes, and it's like, also I never understood why in the first Hunger Games they made District 4 not career tributes as well. It always seemed a bit strange to me. It's like, why not? I don't remember if District 4 tributes in the first Hunger Games were even of any importance or not, but still. They always struck me as a little bit strange, but even though their career tributes, there's meant to be a discrepancy between them and like the regular poorer citizens of the districts. It sort of like ruined the belief a little bit. Like even Katniss and Peter, I felt like looked too old to be part of. Like Katniss, I would be like, okay, plausibly I can see you as 18. Peter, like you're really stretching it. I mean, like Gale himself was like meant to be 18, but he definitely looks like he's like 26 or something. Some characters definitely look young enough. Like Rue, obviously she looks like she's young. She looks like she's 12 or something in the books. Fresh definitely looks too old, I would say. Foxface looks about right. I would say that if I would put her around like 15 or 16. That seems plausible. But the thing is, with this Hunger Games, that Hunger Games, that 74th one, is very, very. It felt very modern. It felt very sleek. It felt futuristic in a sense. The one with these 10th Hunger Games felt a lot more sort of like rustic. It felt more like cobbled together, and in essence, it actually made it feel like a lot more raw. Like every single one of the tributes, maybe bar like Reaper, maybe felt like, yeah, they were 12 to 18 year olds, and they had a whole bevy of like representation, I suppose, within the tributes to show, the poor conditions that the children, I suppose, of Panem are growing up in, and how like despicable the capital's actions are. They basically don't care. Like they indiscriminately choose these kids to be, sent to the slaughter, essentially. Like there was a character who like was missing his arm, I think, and then there was a character who had like and I'm not exactly sure what was going on, but like his eye was and he had like an eye defect or something where he couldn't like probably see out of it or something. I don't really know. There was a character with Down syndrome. What else was there? There was a lot of characters where it's just like, yeah, okay, these characters feel like they plausibly grew up in incredibly tough, incredibly difficult situations, and now being sent to their death. Like, there's a character who just like constantly cried all the time because she obviously didn't want to be in this situation, and it felt incredibly brutal. Them killing each other in the end. Even the antagonist, quote antagonist, Coral, I suppose, in the games felt like she had like still a sense of humanity to it. They all felt like they had a sense of humanity rather than being sort of like tropey villains, I suppose, which the career pack sort of gave, because they're like we're sort of like trained to be killers, and then it's like only towards the end where Kato gets his revelation where it's like, oh wow, like what was this all for? It's pointless. Where he gets any sort of like redemption. Like otherwise they all seem very psychopathic. Like even the antagonist, now we're getting to mega spoilers, I suppose. Coral, in this one, where she's a sort of like the career quote tribute, her and her district partner, I can't remember his name, like Mitty or something like that. They feel like they're humans in a certain sense, because while they certainly seem like they are going to be very psychopathic, the best line I think in the entire movie is when Coral's death scene, when all the snakes are being released, where she's like chasing Lucy Gray and just clawing at her, and she goes, Lucy Gray, it's not fair. Don't tell me it's something like, I didn't kill all of them for nothing, or something like that. That one line alone just like reveals a lot, I suppose, about Coral's character, who so far has been like quite sort of bloodthirsty in a sense, where she's just like, not like she's not remorseful, I suppose, about killing them, but she's just murdering them and like other contestants left, right and centre. It very much shows that, not a different side to her, but it shows her mindset. She understands the games. She knows that 24 kids are coming in, only one is escaping, one is coming out with her life, and she knows the more competition she gets rid of, the better her odds are. it puts her in a different light of like, she's doing this out of necessity to survive, rather than the sort of the sport and the glamour of it, because I think that's a real benefit for showing these Hunger Games as a prequel is it's before it became a glitz, before it became a glamour, before it became like a spectacle of anything. It was seen as barbaric, because it was barbaric. I mean, it still is barbaric, and don't get me wrong, it's not like it stopped being barbaric when it came around 74th games. It just feels a lot more sort of visceral that way. I think it was interesting to see Lucy Gray and Snow's characters themselves. Snow as a character is interesting because, he is quite sort of Machiavellian, maybe, and not narcissistic to a certain degree, where he in very subtle ways he sees himself as sort of like better, like he's very self-centered, shall we say, but it's sort of one which is slowly unveiled as you get more and more. Like when you start out watching a movie, you're sort of say, oh, he's someone who's been put in pretty precarious situations, I suppose, and you sort of kind of empathize, sort of kind of root for him. But then as he goes forward and forward and you see these decisions, he gets like tested with these like choices to make. And in any other story, if he was like a hero or protagonist, you'd see him reject these sort of situations and sort of prevail with his moral goodness. But then you see him make not necessarily the wrong decision per se, well, I mean wrong from like a moral sense, but wrong in the sense that if he was a good character, he wouldn't have made that decision. He constantly makes, very often, the selfish or selfish leaning decision, and then it gets more and more selfish until towards the end, where you're just like, I don't want to be rooting for this guy anymore. He's psychotic. I think it's nice. I think it is a bit sudden towards the end, where it feels like it should have had more of a slope upwards instead of such like a sharp jump upwards to him going fully evil, it feels like. But I think it does make sense, and you're kind of going in with a preconceived notion anyway, because you know that he's evil. Presumably if you know the books. If you don't, then I guess not. But there's a lot of like sort of nice moments with that, like I think culminating very much in the betrayal of his friend, like Sejanus or something like that. I can't remember his name, something like that, because Sejanus is sort of like the epitome of well-meaning. He was raised in an incredibly privileged and brought up in an amazingly privileged situation, but still had empathy for those he sees those who were not born as fortunate as he is. He just doesn't know how to help them. He doesn't know how to relate to them. And then through Snow's, I suppose, voice, he ends up finding his own sort of direction, being like, yeah, I'm going to help these people. But of course he's totally unaware, I suppose, of the situations that they truly face. So when he now actually faces the consequences of his actions, and he doesn't have those privilege anymore to sort of like support him, it's a horrifying, haunting sort of unaliving scene. I said that quite loud, so I don't even know why I'm trying to censor it anymore. So like mega spoilers, he gets executed. Essentially he gets brought up, like him and like the other sort of rebels which he was assisting, but he doesn't really like the other rebels are sort of standing there accepting their fate. They're looking like stalwartly into the face of a capital, being like, yes, I knew this is what I was signing up for. But Sejanus just looks completely lost. He's panicking, he's screaming, he's like calling out for his mother, and then he gets executed. And then this is like why I'm saying it feels so much more visceral. This movie is the Mockingjays mocking like the victims who had just been executed. Their cries and screams, I suppose, just before death is hauntingly like scary. It's like it makes you feel like gross, I guess. It's like ugh. In like the best way possible, because that's kind of like the visceral reaction I assume Suzanne Collins wants out of you, right? What's it about Lucy Gray? I guess she was kind of an interesting character. It's kind of interesting how she sort of said, like, I'm like open over book, I am who I am. But, there's always a sense, I got one at least, like, looking at the actions of her character, that she seems very deceiving in the first place. She's someone who wants you to think that she's an open book, but she's not. That's the impression I got. She lies as easily as she breathes, but she pretends that she doesn't. And I think inherently in her heart she doesn't want to, but she still does anyway. And not that she does it necessarily. She does it more out of necessity. I think there's an ongoing theme of doing things out of necessity to survive. I think the villain, I can't remember her name at all. She was like very creepy in the best possible way, and she was engagingly interesting. The same way that Mel is a very, like from Riot Arcane is also a very engagingly interesting character, where they're sort of like, they feel powerful and they feel like they're in control. They feel like a villain who knows what they're doing, not infallible, certainly, but someone who knows what she's doing, where you see her actions and you just go, oh, that's diabolical, sort of thing. Like the scene with her and the iridescent snakes, and then the other student like claiming Snow's work as also her own. It's like, well, go on, you know, get the assignment out of the snakes thing, and if you die, then you die. And also the thing where Reaper was like putting his middle finger up to the Capitol, being like, is this what you wanted? I'm not going to give you what you want. And then she just immediately interrupts that with like a presidential broadcast to be like, hey, you know, these rebels are, you know, still against us. And as you can see, them like this really important person died or something. And then, well, I don't know why she wanted to execute everyone. I guess, you know, you could say it was something which is very much sort of blinded by anger, but I don't know if that really fits in that sense. I almost wanted her to have a much more Machiavellian schemes. Like, she feels like she has schemes upon schemes upon schemes, which is fantastic. I love her. I love a competent villain. I think we all do. We all love a villain who's just like, oh, they feel like they pose an actual threat rather than just sort of being a villain for the sake of being a villain, you know. So the games itself were okay. Like, I don't think they're all that engaging, but it's interesting to see how different they were. It was basically a death arena rather than, you know, in Hunger Games it was like a death region, death landmass, almost. But it's like a coliseum versus like a hunting ground, I suppose, is perhaps a better way to put it. I don't really know what else to put to say about it. There's some interesting things. I think a lot of the side characters, like the smaller characters in the Hunger Games, are a lot more memorable. I still remember like a decent amount of characters from the main Hunger Games. Of course, it's Kato, Clove, who were both very memorable because they're quite antagonistic. Marvel and Glimmer were like kind of there as well, like also being antagonists. I don't remember all too much. I don't remember 3. No, District 3 boy was the one who like joined a careers pack because he set up the bombs or something. And then District 4, I don't remember. 5, I don't remember. 6, no, I think 5 had Foxface, right? And then Rue was in 11. I don't remember what any of the other districts are. Oh, and Fresh, of course. And then, of course, you got Katniss and Peter in the first one. But this one, it felt like it was a lot more memorable ones, despite the fact I don't know where they came from. You know, I don't know them exactly the names, but, you know, Reaper, Dill, both come to mind. I can't remember... Janus? Something like that. But the male in District 12, of course, Lucy Gray. And then, like, who else you got? I don't remember necessarily, but the 2 from District 7, the Lumberjacks. Lamina, that's her name. Who is an awesome character, by the way. A very smart strategist, in a sense. I don't know. I guess it was kind of interesting to see how things came about. Lucy Gray sang a lot. She had a beautiful voice, whoever the actress is who played her. Singing is, I suppose, a sign of rebellion. I don't know, because now I'm thinking about it more. Like, those are the good points. But those are like really good like scenes, a lot of them. But then it's just like, what apart from that, like, what else did I think about it? I don't really know. Like, it's sort of just, I don't know. But with some really good lines, like one that Lucy Gray says to Snow, being like, someone says like he's glad that I survived you as well, or something along those lines was pretty cool. And I don't know. And the rest of it is like, it's good, but it's not going to stick in my mind. The things that are going to stick in my mind are those scenes, and probably just only those scenes. From Snakes and Songbirds. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I think if you like the series, you'll love this. And I think if you like general young adult fiction, you'll probably like this. You know, it's a good dystopian sort of movie. But I don't know. I guess for me personally, I felt like there was something missing, but it might have just been because of a pacing issue. It didn't quite land for me, but who knows? Anyway, I'm going to have this episode of here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.